Hi grammar students, this is Brian and I'm here to give a little video about tenses and why they're important and why we're going to focus on them so much in our grammar class. The first thing that we're going to do is focus on grammar and especially these tenses. Now before I get started on that, I want to talk a little bit about the grammar class in general, okay? What are we trying to do in this class? We're not trying to just review these forms and make sure that you can fill in the blanks. We're trying to move from a place where you can communicate with somebody. All of you know how to communicate with another person speaking English. You can be understood. But we want to go from a point where you can simply communicate to a place where you can communicate correctly. All right? Talking with somebody, writing with somebody, a place where you're going to be able to communicate with them and be 100% correct, so that the person that's reading your email or talking with you doesn't feel like they need to correct you or feel like even that you're a non-native speaker. We want you to get to that point where you sound exactly like a non-native speaker, okay? And that's going to require a lot of dedication to get there. It takes a little bit of thinking. The process that we're going to use throughout the class is what I call a grammar wheel. We have the first thing is we're going to be learning and expanding our knowledge of things. You guys learned a lot of grammar before in high school or whenever. We're going to try to review that and expand it. We're going to do that through a lot of things in class. We're going to be listening and reading about these grammar items so that we can expand our knowledge some more. We're going to be doing a lot of practice. And I've talked about here, I said practice for perfection. This means that we're going to be practicing the things we do perfectly. We're not just going to be speaking or writing nothing. We're going to be trying to practice them in a perfect context so that you get that perfect items down in your mind correctly. And finally, we're going to be doing reflecting and refining our abilities. We're going to be thinking carefully about the grammar that we use and whether or not we're using it correctly and trying to refine it. There are mistakes that you probably learned in grammar and you become comfortable with them. Sometimes we're going to have to unlearn some things that you used to do and refine them so that they're better. So just keep in mind that this wheel is always going. You're always going to be refining this. And this is just a part of language learning in general. Okay? So let's talk about tenses specifically. Why is this so important? Well, it's very important for you to talk in the right time. Let me just give a couple examples from Georgia or French that might help elucidate, make this more clear. What if I said to you in Georgia, Ana kanimshi l'madrasa libera. Ana kanimshi. That's present tense, but I said libera, yesterday. It sounds a little bit odd. You maybe understand me. You say, okay, fine. Yesterday you went, you know. Likewise, if you said in French, you know, if you said the same thing in French, you have the right verb, at least the meaning. I get that you are going somewhere, but you said yesterday. Just like in English, a student might come up to me and say, oh yeah, what did you do yesterday? Oh, I go to the market. Well, I would say as a native speaker, I would say, okay, I get you. What you meant to say is, I went to the market yesterday. And I understand you. Then that's good. We're at that point where you can be understood. But we want to go from a point where you just can be understood to the point where you can be understood because you spoke correctly, where you just come and say, I went to the market yesterday. And I, as the native speaker, don't have to correct in my mind what you said, okay? So let's keep that in mind throughout the tenses. There are a lot of tenses in English, and I'm not going to go into each one. We have in our book a lot of exercises and chapters that are going to deal with this. But I just want you to know that it's very important to speak in the correct time so that your listener or reader knows exactly what you're talking about. I can be confused. You say, I go to the market. I'm like, do you mean now you're going to go, or yesterday, or you're going to go? You need to be able to speak correctly about the time. So a couple things to think about. When you're speaking, try to make sure you use the right time. Maybe you have to think a little bit before you speak. It's just in that first part. You want to get to the point that this feels natural, but maybe you have to think a little bit before you speak. Pay attention to what you say and what other people say. Listen carefully to what other people say in their time, and maybe in your own mind, correct them, you know. So you might have to have a very powerful internal dialogue to think about how these tenses are used properly, okay? Correcting errors. pay close attention to yourself and to other people when they're writing, speaking, to make sure that they are using the right tense. And if you're not quite sure if that tense is used correctly, ask me. I can help explain this some more. And of course, your book and your exercises will help make it clear when to use these tenses. Okay? So that's the main thing. With these tenses, it's very important to get them right. Because yes, you might talk to somebody and they might understand you, but you might be speaking a little bit incorrectly. And you want to get to that point where you're using everything 100% right. Okay? That's it for the introduction to tenses. Please pay close attention to our book and our exercises. Ask a lot of questions as we go along. And hopefully, over time, this will feel very natural to you, so you're not going to have to think about it so hard. Finally, I have a little challenge for you that are in class. I just want to give, for the first person who comes up to me in class, shakes my hand, and tells me a little bit about what you did in the summer. Okay, so you probably will be using mostly past tense, but you might use other tenses in our discussion. But I want you to come up to me, shake my hand, tell me about what some of the things you did in the summer, and we'll start a little conversation that way. First person to do that, actually we'll say anybody who wants to do it, I'll give a little bonus. Okay, so take that seriously, and I'll see you soon. Take care.